And today we're going to talk about research techniques for game designers. So yeah, that's me. I'm Radosław Klasa, currently working at Sperasoft as technical game designer. Previously worked in Mousetrap games on a smaller project, smaller scale, and some indie studios. Yeah, so about the presentation, I'm going to focus first of all, try to define what is the research, because it's kind of tricky if we're coming to with definitions of academic research, because we only have the one word for research, and it's going to take us with the game designer research, the practical approach, and the academic approach. But we'll come to that. With the definitions, later we go for some different research heuristics. So techniques, how we can approach researching games for getting new references for our game that we are working on. Then I will show you some different tools that you can acquire when you're doing the research. And it's not only Google, but it's still one of the most important, I think. And then I will try to focus more about how to present the whole research that we've done to different people, like from the perspective of a designer, how we talk to other designer, how we talk to art or programmers. So without further ado, I based a little of this book called Game Design Research by Petri Lankowski and Josie Holopainen. But it's still, I haven't found any literature about like practical approach. I thought that I found this book, Game Design Research, and it will be fine. It will be for my whole presentation. Unfortunately not. It was more about the academic approach. But still, I find some really interesting clues there that you can also use for yourself. So the book is free to find. You can just write down Game Design Research on about third page, I think. Third link will drive you to the main site of the book, and you can download it for free. So if you're interested in this more academic approach for it, yeah, I will just tell a little about it. But yeah, you can just go and download it for free. In this book, I found out that the academics, so people in universities that are doing the scientific research about design, are dividing the research in like 3 categories. Basically, they're treating the designers and developers like laboratory labs, kind of. And they're segregated in 3 papers. So the first one is like the research about the design. So it's focused about the experience of the process from a designer perspective. So they are making interviews, talking of the postmortems of creation of game, and stuff like that. Second thing is like research through design. Is the way they're approaching like different terms, like the MDA, structural mechanics, dynamics, aesthetics, and other like this really theoretical stuff that is not often used for us as doing the practical game developing. But some of those are pretty useful for us for getting the common vocabulary. We're going to back for it. Yeah, so that's all about research through design. And the third one is the research for design, is where the academics trying to create a game and a paper with it. So it's like more using the strictly theory that they created in the approach of making a video game, but not the commercial one, so to say. Yeah, so that's all, so to say, about the academic approach. It's more about the meta look on the game industry and game development, not really into the research that we designers encounter in everyday life. It's often mistaken as user research, and that's something different that we'll also talk about it soon. And yeah, it didn't provide any details about how the process of making a game or getting the references for us really looks like. So right now I'm going to give you the practical approach. So yeah, I'm doing my part. And yeah, another cool thing what provided in this book was from Donald Schoen. It's the moving seeing pattern. Donald Schoen was an architect, and he once invited a student for a task to prepare a room in an architecture way, so get the chairs on the right position, etc., etc. So what Donald observed is that the student worked out that way, that the first thing he did, he just like get into the room, so how the room looks. Next thing he does, he was moving all the chairs, all the tables around the room. And after moving it in the right position, he started to get, again, looking at the room, if it's fitting or not for the purpose of this installation. And I think it's also, this kind of process also exists when we are doing our research for our creating games, because we also, first thing, we are finding similar titles to our game that we are developing. Then we are going into it, like analyzing the mechanics, making reverse engineering of the game, and then getting conclusion if we are going the right direction or not. The same way works the prototypes. So we are making a prototype, playing the prototype, and then again going back for the seeing state and looking if this have this factor of fun. Is it funny for us or not? If it's like really good gameplay. Yeah, so basically we talked about the academic approach for it and how we can go for it. So let's go for the research purpose. Why we doing the research after all? So one of the most important thing for us making research is that we are getting a common vocabulary. So when all the game developers are playing games, we are getting like into our own jargon. And we know how to imply different mechanics, different rules that appeared in other games for our own purpose. For example, we have the Battle Pass mechanic system that was introduced in Fortnite, and then it went for all different games. So when we are playing the games, we know how the Battle Pass works, how we can approach it for our own game, and if it will be useful, and if yes, in which terms it will be nice. So yeah, common vocabulary is important when we're doing research. It's like the base of it. And the second thing is just works. So we are looking for the things that making the game fun. So how can we, in other way, know if our game is fun if we don't play other games and the other games that didn't does provide some fun. So we have to define it, how it works in different environments, and what is strictly the thing that is getting us entertainment. So it just works, as said. And the third thing for research is, of course, about the target and market. So we are going to know what other companies, what other games provided for us, how did they do, if this was well done or not, if it was successful or it did get a lot of positive reviews and stuff like that. Yeah, so based on the research purpose, we can go and define different approaches for the research. So we have the first one is like the market and target research that we talked about one moment before. And it's about the market, so we are getting to know how many sales, what will the game, what kind of players are playing the game, and if we are going to be a successful title or not. The second things are like the mechanics and systems, and that is more for the strictly game designer perspective. So we know what mechanics were used, what systems were created, how they work along together, and yeah, how can we merge them to our game. And the third thing, the games are also about emotions. So we have to know how different games provided our different experiences, and we try to also achieve some kind of emotion evoke in our players. So that's the third thing that we are going to do when we're doing research. For example, we want to make a game about fear, so we're going to go for all the horror movies, for all video games that have some jump scares, if we like to use the jump scare mechanic, and stuff like that. So we've done with the academic approach, the practical approach a little bit, why we're doing the research. So now we can go with the myth and how we actually can make a research in the terms of design research for my definition. So there are a lot of tools, probably most of them you know, and probably also most of them you are using like in everyday life or game designer. Using that tools, you are easily to find out different games and how they're working and how they can be used in process of developing your own game. So given that all list, this is when the fun begins. So I provided here like three different techniques, approaches, heuristics for doing the research. I named them deep dive, plot trope, and listing mechanics. And all of them are a little bit different from each other and will be used in different stage of game production, I think. Most of research probably is done during the pre-production phase, but also when new features appears, then probably we'll be moving for different types of these techniques. So first one is the deep dive. Deep dive, so-called technique by myself, is like about taking one game and analyzing in its very in detailed way. So we are trying to reverse engineering all the mechanics. What I mean by reverse engineering is that we are trying to get to know how the system was programmed in that game and trying to recreate it on our own purpose. We're trying to find what is the fun in a very detailed technical way and how the system are working with each other. And yeah, we're focusing mainly on one game or one system if it's not very complex in different games. And the most useful tools for it, as from the mentioned list earlier, will be probably the game wikis and playing the games on your own, because all the detailed stuff, like for example, how the climbing animation works in, I don't know, God of War, if we are moving along some points, or are we just having a free state of moving along the whole wall, it's all, or where are the animation blending, we all have to probably find it all ourselves. But there are also like cool resources on the internet, of course. That's why we're doing the research. Oh, it's getting some tricky way. Oh, yeah. It should be better. Anyway, we can go for some GDC movies, videos, and see how the game was created. And also we can find some already reverse engineered games. For example, a parry mechanic from Ghost of Tsushima. Here it is presented. Above we have the blue, then green, and then red color. It means all the animation frames. So in the blue, when the color is blue, we have the count of the animation frame when the parry will apply, and the green color we have the perfect parry, and then we have like when the parry is failed in the game. So that's a very complex system, and it really must took a lot of time for creator of this video to get all the game animation, all different attacks, even in combos, and see at which frame we have the perfect parry frames and stuff like that. So it's really good to use it if we are going to make a combat system in our game and see how big, for example, should we provide the window opportunity for making a parry? Yeah, so this is like the second video with the GIF provided in a slower motion, and we see in the different approaches of the different enemies how it works. And then we can also go with another system like fueling furnace in Factorio, for example. Yeah, it works that way that we are providing a coal and some ore, and there is going to be forged into one piece of ore reforged. And we find a lot of details already provided in our game, like how long time it takes, how many energy it creates, and yeah, how long it takes, all of that, all the fuel value of different resources, and that can be pretty useful at the beginning for us if we are also creating some reforge system. The same system can be found in Valheim. There's also a smelter that we're going to insert some ores and coal, and they're going to get some output. But yeah, Valheim wiki isn't so detailed, but we also can find a lot of useful information, like how many different fuels exist in the game, and what are the timers, what is the resource consumption that we have in the game. And with that, we have like the basic blueprint for our system. If we're making a game with that kind of system, that can be then used as the input for making our game. Yeah, like also there said, like the smelter uses approximately 1 coal every 15 seconds as fuel, and yeah. Yeah, so concluding the deep dive technique, it's about finding some core game reference that we're going to really deep dive into it, see all the mechanics, how it works, try to get some very detailed information about the timers, about the animation frames, for example. And it will be really, really useful for us if we're going to get some really interesting mechanic that is going to be used for our game, and we want to find out how did it work. Yeah, the drawback of it takes a lot of time for designer to provide all the information, especially if we are going to take all the animation for a game and see how long it takes, and yeah, I'll balance this stuff. The second one is the plot trope. And yeah, then we are using some trope about, I don't know, some interesting system or maybe some emotion that we want to evoke. And we are going to have provided a list of a lot of different titles that also include that one trope. For that one purpose, a really useful site is the TV tropes. For example, we can see the escort mission that can be found in different games, and follow the trope. How was it made in different approaches? So defining the escort mission is the section, are the sections or levels in our video game where you have a safeguard or NPC that we are going to guard during some distance, and see how, yeah, and try to do it in a safe way, that he didn't get hurt. So on the TV trope side, we can find different genres like hack and slash, and see how it was done in, for example, Diablo 3, or even like Bad Piggy's video game. So then with that different data, we can elaborate and try to find out our own way for it. So in our hack and slash game that we are making, we can maybe use some puzzle game example of escort mission. So that's kind of tricky and useful approach. And yeah, with that we can start to be creative and see how will it work in our game. Of course, there are plenty of other games, especially if we look for the RPGs, different approaches. There's also like Gothic described in there. And how did it work? We can then check the reviews of the game. Did players enjoyed that kind of mechanic? If yes, why? If not, why? And with that data, we can elaborate for our own game. The same goes for different emotions. For example, we can see how revenge motive was provided in, for example, Baldur's Gate or God of War, and a lot of other different titles that then we can, having the list, we have being informed that that kind of trope exists in that title, and that we can use it on our own way. Yeah, so the plot trope is useful, like high-level abstract system that we're going to have in our game, and with that information, we are just getting more pool of different references that we can use for creating our own game. So yeah, the third kind of mechanic is like the listing mechanics. And that approach, we define that its most important is to provide a lot of different references. So it's the quantity over quality. We are using a lot of different games as references, providing it's the best way in GIFs. We have to be really precise. We have to catch the bull's eye into it, and provide some additional description for example, programmer that is going to implement that system. That one might be useful when we are trying to create a feature. We know how it will be looking, and yeah, that's all. So let's pretend that we are making some, making a military third-person perspective game that provides us with night vision. So it will be featuring ChatGPT, for example. So we can ask just ChatGPT what games are featuring the night vision, and we provide some list of different titles. That's kind of useful when we are providing the research. Then we can just sort it out for the games that are in third-person perspective. And we see, for example, that Metal Gear is using that mechanic, that also Splinter Cell have it, and Batman Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, that we can just Google out and see if it works. We are going to look into the game, see how it works, and try to find out about the night vision mechanic. In Batman Arkham Asylum, we have the detective mode that highlights to us the interactive objects that we can interact with, or the enemies where we can see their position. So it's really clean and it's really useful for us, but it doesn't feature the military theme that we are making a military third-person perspective game. So it's cool in the basic core, but it's not going with the military stuff. Then we can see how it was done in the Splinter Cell. Splinter Cell has the military vibe that we are looking for, all the greenish light. But they're not highlighting the enemies that we are fighting during the night mode. So if we got only those two references and we are just providing it for the programmer, for example, then we just have to get this comment that is here with the pluses and minuses. That here we have this nice highlight, and here we have this nice military vibe that we are going to use. And the best way scenario is that we find a reference that is also featuring the highlights and the military vibe. And for example, we are going to use the Metal Gear Solid 5 for the reference. because we have the really, really strict military vibe, and we are highlighting all the objectives that are important right now. So yeah, listening mechanics, I find that is the easiest to understand, but it's kind of easy, but we have to be really careful with it, because we need to be really precise what we are looking for. Like giving only a GIF or a picture without strictly precising what are we looking on, what is the purpose of this reference. We are just getting with, just do it how it was done in, Splinter Cell, but which one mechanics, because this is a big game, which one we have to use, we have to point out. And it's also easy to get too many references. So that way, we are just overwhelmed with them, and we are strictly not really sure in which direction we should go. It's like too detailed information, too precise. So with that, we have to manage only, I don't know, 5 to 6 references that we are going to use. If they are exactly very similar in the way, and we are really know what we are doing, and and then use them. So we've got the information of preparing the references, and now we have to somehow present it for different people in our company that we are working with. So there are different approaches for that that we're going to move about. So let's start with the general tips for it. We have to be precise, as mentioned in the holistic mechanic technique. What are we looking for in that example? What we want to use. The best way, I think, is to using GIFs, or also getting the clips from YouTube that is featuring this 3 to 5 seconds video that it's going this is what we need in our approach, and then it's good to discuss it. We don't have to overdo it, because, as said before, when you provide too many information, the technical execution for it might be not so good. Very important in providing and references for others is to talk with each other, because everybody has a different perspective for the game. And also, when we are looking for references, there can be some misunderstandings that we don't want to. So it's really good, especially when we're starting to work with a new person, to talk with them a lot, getting some meetings, and that we are all the time that we are on the same page with him. And as the most important thing, we have to provide the context. As to be precise, we need to have the context of the feature that we are going to make and why we need it. So let's start with providing information for other designers. It's, from the designer perspective, is probably the easiest one, because designers also have this broad spectrum of games they are playing. So we can just shuffle different titles, and everybody knows how does it work in different approaches. So then we can say, let's make it like it was in Zelda, but a little twist from Resident Evil, when we're talking about, for example, some sneaky mechanics. So maybe Resident Evil wasn't the best example, but let's go with Metal Gear and Splinter Cell, as it was before. So we have this military vibe, everybody knows what we're going about. We also should talk about the mechanics all the time, because our game probably will have some different settings, want to make a different fantasy for our players. So we are just going to look for the mechanics, the systems that are into the emotions of the fantasy that we're going to evoke. And with going with the basic titles and the pool of different references, we can just start to brainstorm it, how it can be done in our game. So we have the list of titles that was cool here. Here it wasn't so cool, so maybe we can get this one mechanic from another game, and that way we're going to find something new. Yeah, moving for programmers. With programmers, we have to be really technical. Also, we have to use like a lot of references if we are going. We're not talking so abstract level as with designers. We are going to get a lot of gifts. Be more about the systemic way. So we have to have some technical knowledge, how the game goes, how it works underneath, and try to do it in the trying to do it that way. So see how it works on the programmer way and try to sell it for the programmer in his own language. So it's good to provide some different diagrams, variables that are going to be used, for example, for animation speed or jump high and or I don't know, reload time, how long it takes, or what is the recoil. And then we can provide some example values. It's also pretty useful. Like we want to know about how many seconds the reload takes, how fast we move our character when we are going to making some movement mechanic system. And then try to find out different approaches from different games, of course. So again, we can move with the GDC Vault talks and see how their system worked, get it for the programmer, and he can use it in his own way. And it's really important, especially if you're making completely new feature, to giving some instructions step by step. So even if we have the reference for the system, so we are really detailed and we are really sure that we are working on the same page for it. And as one of my friends says, who programs designs? So when we are not in the same page with the programmers, they are going to design the game on their own. So, and there are going to be some conflicts and other unpleasant stuff. So, as mentioned before, it's really important to just talk to each other as often as we can to always have some sanity checks if we are still on the same page all the time. Yeah, moving for the art. When we're presenting the research to artists, it's really good for using a lot of visual stuff, so providing screenshots, especially we can use photo modes from different games and make, when we're having some object, we can provide the screenshots from different angles, from the top, from the left, from the right, from the front and back. And see, different angles. So the artist, if it is a 3D artist, he can provide very similar mesh or asset for it. There's also to be really descriptive. So use a lot of adjectives. What are we talking about? What are we really like in that game, or in that what emotions it's evoking in us. So the artist can try to figure it on his own and also be on the same page. So that's the final slide of the presentation. We have different approaches for making a game design, for making our research as designers, more the colloquial way, I think, not like the academics. So we have to get different approach for our goals. So depending if we are going to need a deep dive for our mechanic, or we need to just list the mechanics in our game for providing context for new feature. It's really cool to get that approach for us, and then we have somehow to show it for another people that we are working with. And of course, the most important thing, the best way of providing the best detailed information, it will be probably to play the games by ourselves. So that way we are just experiencing the things that were created by other companies, other designers, and other approaches for a different fantasy. And with that knowledge, we are trying to recreate it or making something completely new. So yeah, we have to play the games all the time. Yeah, and that's all for my side. So thank you for your time. If you have any questions, so that's the time right now for it.
Hi.
Hey.
So I would like to ask, are there some analytical tools, data-driven tools that you'd recommend, maybe that you found out are good?
I think all the analytical, data-driven things are more applied for mobile games, as from my experience, because that's the way we have like a lot of a big scope of players, like in thousand millions, for sure. Other going like in this strict like user research probably that way we can define that. It's not so useful, I think, in context of, I don't know, indie games or something like that. Only AAA companies can have resources for that kind of approaches with data-driven, and because they also have the player base and tools to provide it. So no, unfortunately, I don't have any tools for data-driven research, so to say. Okay. If there are no other questions, so thank you again, and yeah.
Thank you very much.